In the land of cuddles lived a cute little bear called Teddy. He lived a happy life and loved his family. Teddy was always dreaming about fascinating worlds and fantastic stories. His friends called him the Little Dreamer. Like all little bears, Teddy went to school to learn about language and math. But all was not well for Teddy at school. His mind froze each time the teacher asked him to solve simple problems like 2 plus 3. When he came home in the evening and sat down to do his homework, all the alphabets and numerals in the textbook looked like meaningless shapes and symbols. And so, Teddy found refuge in his dreams. Every day, Teddy went to school with unfinished homework. In class, he found that he couldn't even answer the simplest questions. He came to be known as a lazy bear with a poor attitude towards learning. Teddy found himself surrounded by annoyed adults on all sides. They constantly told him he was good for nothing. Soon, Teddy retreated into a shell, trying but unable to understand why he is the way he is. What will become of his beautiful dreams? What will become of our little dreamer? Children have a very delicate emotional state, and it is very often shattered by parents, teachers, and peers who believe that they are not willing to accomplish simple academic tasks such as reading or writing. The real problem, however, could lie not in their intent, but in the manner by which children learn. Some children understand the world differently, but very often, parents and teachers don't understand this
Headed! What's going on?
and try to force fit them into conventional slots of expectations.
Idiot!
This causes serious harm to their self-esteem, and they could withdraw into a shell or even display aggressive or destructive behavior.
I don't want to do it.
Each child has a brain that is unique to that child. Children aren't machines. It's not as if you can turn the regulator and speed them up at will.
When we label a child as lazy or careless without really understanding the issue at hand, we are most likely inflicting serious damage on his or her self-esteem, hampering the child's potential and what he or she can do for society in the future. I mean, just imagine for a second, if Edison had lost all his self-confidence when his parents and his teachers were taunting him, we would never have seen the light.
The future of humankind rests upon the children of today. So are we going to raise children who are full of insecurities and complexes? Or are we going to raise children who are at ease with themselves, who are creative and confident?
Our classrooms rely heavily on the visual mode for teaching, which pressurizes the children into using the same sensory mode for learning. In a standard classroom, it is very possible that more than 50% of the students learn better with a sensory mode other than visual. That could be auditory, tactile, which is using the sense of touch to learn, or kinesthetic, where children learn using whole body movement.
The question that arises is, why are we using such unidimensional teaching methods for children who are so multidimensional?
Teaching controlled movement. That is the need of the hour. I remember once in school, I had this friend who was really bad at spelling. Teachers were at a loss as to what to do with her. Then suddenly, one fine day, she started getting it right. You know how she did it? She would bounce a ball every time she would speak out a letter from the word that she was trying to spell. It was entertaining, and she started spelling just fine.
We now know that controlled movement has a big part to play in the intellectual development of the child. If you have a little child who sees a table, it may be a glass top table, it's a new material to her, she's going to feel it with her hands, she's going to go under it, go over it, try and negotiate her way around it, and in doing so, she learns a lot about the length, breadth, and height of those dimensions.
The world is changing so rapidly that acquiring special knowledge is nowhere near as important as learning and making sense of new information. For children to function in this world of ours, we need to equip them with lifelong learning and thinking skills.
Learning difficulties are observed in different areas. Most often, children suffer from difficulties in a combination of areas. These areas are classified as reading, spelling, writing, handwriting, math, sequencing, verbal expression, fine and large motor movement. We will now go through specific techniques designed to enhance skills in each of these areas.
When the child has a difficulty in reading, the mechanics of reading are so stressful that he's only concentrating on how to read, how to do this deciphering of the words in front of him. He is not understanding what he reads. In such cases, the neurological impress method or twin reading is very effective and very popular because it's very simple to administer. It needs no special training. Also, it's multisensory. It involves seeing, speaking and hearing. So there is a threefold reinforcement for the learner.
Now we are going to read this paragraph together.
To use this technique, the teacher and the student sit side by side along with the passage that they are going to read. The written material is clearly visible to both. Then, the teacher picks out all the words that are new to the student and carefully pronounces each and explains their meaning.
Resumed means restart. Resumed.
Resumed.
After this is done, the teacher and student both begin reading aloud the passage simultaneously.
Presently,
It comes.
At a slow pace, they go through the entire passage. For starters, the teacher's voice is louder than the student's. Slowly, the student finds confidence and starts to read the passage clearly and without hesitation.
Normal speed.
As progress is made, the teacher's voice level dips and the student's voice becomes louder.
and resumed a normal speed. But when it passed under
Sound symbol association is a very important skill for children. Generally, we believe it is acquired by around the age of 5. Doing B for ball and C for cat and D for dog, in effect, has no meaning unless you know that when you see the structure of the letter B, it says B. When you see the structure of the letter C, it says K, and so on and so forth.
Samarth, I'm going to pick out a letter.
The teacher first picks out a letter from the alphabet and shows it to the student. She asks the student to make the sound that corresponds to that letter. The teacher asks him to identify
What's
the
name of
letter.
Making a sound, she asks the student to pick out the corresponding letter. What letter is that?
T.
Correct. What letter is that?
P.
This technique is then extended to many different consonant blends. Gradually, the student is acquainted with the phonetic properties of the entire alphabet and its blends.
Visual discrimination is a skill that children need to have to enable them to read well. The skill is important because children need to be able to distinguish between colors. So if the child is not able to distinguish between colors, then he is not going to be able to distinguish the printed word from the background, the page. So that's one skill. The second skill is the ability to distinguish between different shapes and sizes.
The adult draws a margin on the board and the control word is written inside that margin. Outside the margin, the control word is rewritten a few times, each time changing a letter or the orientation of a letter. Then, the adult asks the student to correctly match words from either side of the margin.
The same exercise can be extended in different ways. You could have an exercise where there is the silhouette of an object and you have to match it to the appropriate object. play games like find the hidden object, spot the 10 differences. Jigsaw puzzles is also a very, very effective method of training a child in visual discrimination. Skywriting is a wonderful technique to help children learn spelling. It is a lot of fun and it's very entertaining. What happens is the child is required to spell out the word in the air using his entire arm in large movements. The large movement of the arm reinforces the memory of the structure of the word.
Do you know how to spell the word bird?
Yes.
The adult first discusses the word that the child must learn to spell.
B.
No, the correct spelling is B-I-R-D. The student is required to trace a huge size letter in the air using her entire arm, making large sweeping movements. I want you to say the letter. Start.
B. I.
The student says the letter out loud as soon as she has finished drawing it.
B.
Now can you spell the word out?
Yes. B. I. R. D. Bird.
Good. Now I want you to write the word in your notebook.
Okay.
Come. To reinforce the learning, the teacher then asks the student to write out the word using pencil and paper and then use it correctly in a sentence.
Touch is the most basic sense that we use to learn about the environment around us. Our first interaction with our environment is through our fingertips. And that's why the sense of touch is a very important sensory mode of learning.
The teacher lays out the letters of the alphabet in ascending order on a table in front of the student. I'm going to teach you how to spell the word from using sandpaper letters. Now I want you to pick out the letter F. It is important to have the student get up and walk to the letters to involve whole body movement. The student also has to speak out the alphabet that she picks up. The other letters in the word follow, and the student repeats the same action for all of them, always saying out loud each letter that she picks up. Good. Now pick up each letter and feel it with your fingers. The student then does this for all the letters in the word. To reinforce the spelling and also increase the fun value of the technique, the student is blindfolded and made to feel each letter of the word. Only this time, the letters of the word are placed incorrectly. Here. The student has to correctly identify the letter and also point out the error in the spelling.
You have made the word from, not from.
That's correct. The blindfold is then opened and the student spells out the word correctly.
F-R-O-M. From.
The student is then asked to write the word using pen and paper.
A child learning to write needs to be acquainted with the right stance, depending on whether she is left-handed or right-handed. Very young children need to be left alone, age 2, age 3, because they still haven't determined their hand preference. But for the rest of the children, they need to know what is the right paper position, the right way to sit.
If the paper being written on is placed perpendicular to the child, it causes the finger holding the pen to cover the written matter, and so the student cannot see what she is writing. To prevent that, the paper has to be placed in a slanted position. For a right-handed student, the paper has to be angled to the left and to the right for a left-handed student. This allows the student to clearly see what she is writing. It is also important to ensure that the student is sitting straight and not bending forward too much. It is advisable to go for thick pens, preferably with a rubber grip. The .5 caliber pens are entirely undesirable. The pen rests on the middle finger and the index finger and thumb move it across the paper. Breaking up the letters of the alphabet into letter families helps children learn how to write them properly. The categorization is based on the writing style that is used to write these letters. The straight family contains the letters I, J, K, L, T, U, and Y. And the pattern to follow while practicing to write these letters is like this. The bump family contains the letters B, H, M, N, P, and R. And the pattern to follow while practicing to write these letters is to make bumps such as this. The 1 o'clock family contains the letters A, C, D, G, O, Q, and S. It is called so because the student begins writing any of these letters at the 1 o'clock position. This is important because each letter needs to be closed. For example, if A is left open, it could look like a U. If D is left open, it could look like CL. The pattern to follow while writing these letters is like this. The slant family contains the letters V, W, and X. And the pattern to follow while practicing to write these letters is like this.
When a child writes on a piece of paper, there are two processes that happen. One is composing and the second is recording. Now, while you're writing on a piece of paper, this happens at the same time. As you compose, you record. So you might be writing about a particular topic and you write down thought number 1, thought number 2, then you go to thought number 3. And then you suddenly think that, oh, this next thought, but that should have come up there. So that makes it very messy and it's very confusing for the child. So here with a visual map where you don't have to bother in what order your thoughts come out, this is what mind mapping helps in doing.
Mitali, we are now going to write an essay on my class picnic. But we are going to do this. The teacher first acquaints the child with the topic that will be written about. Then, on a writing board, she writes it in the center and asks the student to name any thoughts that come to mind that are related to the topic.
Food and games.
Once the student starts, the teacher maps out all those subtopics around the central thought, linking each to the main topic using a line. Now let's come to food. What food did you eat?
Pizza and some burgers.
Once all subtopics are mapped, the student begins to list out further information related to each of the thoughts already in place.
The beach.
All your thoughts are on the board. Now what would you like to write about first in your essay?
And my friends.
What this does is that the student now has recorded all information related to the central theme and is now in a position to write about the given topic. So now it will be much easier for you to write your essay if you go by this order.
We need to move with technology. When we have something like computers and the word processor that it has, it needs to be used by these children who have a difficulty in writing. Because using the word processor, you are clearly separating both the tasks of composing and recording. You can move the cursor up and down at will. And also a child who has problems with letter orientation or spellings, it all gets corrected automatically. I thoroughly recommend